So I'm going to introduce myself since I was the chair of this track as well as one of the speakers. We saw with Angela one of the case studies. We're going to be seeing another case study about personalization and engagement with Gen AI. You're going to see some things that overlap, and we're going to see how we are approaching things in a different way, as well as the framework we're using to understand this process. So I want to start talking a little bit about me. Why? Because I'm wearing different hats for this conversation, and I'm going to talk about what we are learning from an industry perspective at NAA, and then what we are doing in the Federal Savings Bank. I'm the CMO there. I don't know how many of you know the Federal Savings Bank. A couple of here. Well, actually, we have more than 30% awareness. So we are the largest privately held veteran-owned retail bank in the country, and we focus mostly on home lending. So basically what we do is residential mortgages. So we are big in that space, and we are fair charter, and we are OCC regulated. So many of the things that I'm speaking here are things that I also learned about being NAA and the AI piece of digital marketing, and I can talk more freely about those things and some of the things that we do at the bank. I'm also a professor at Northwestern. I teach branding in the digital age. So basically how you married traditional branding models into this environment with VR, with AI and different type of technologies. So I'm wearing those three hats when I'm talking in this presentation. So we start think we have been hearing creating content at mass scale. We have been hearing about personalization. We have been hearing about MarTech. So AI, Gen AI, agentic AI, etc. So I wanted to start this conversation talking about the power of the right MarTech stack and how we merge marketing strategy with data and technology, and how that's a fundamental piece to then think about how AI plays within that MarTech stack. And basically, this is a quote that I wrote in a while ago in a white paper, but basically it's about creating stronger consumer engagement, driving loyalty, and really driving sales. So part of us, we know our function is not just to drive brand equity and brand growth, but also how we, mostly in financial institutions, we are enabler for driving sales growth. So I borrow this chart from the NAA MarTech team, and I really like it because it's focus of how MarTech should become the engine of growth. And we all learn about the traditional models of consumer decision journey mapping. So if you see here, we go from the traditional model from awareness to engagement, decision, transaction, service, retention, all the way from awareness to loyalty. And how we overlay that with the customer interactions. So across different things from out-of-home, digital, events, decision, online comparison, etc. So merging different models that we use from consumer decision mapping to the different touch points to how we activate that across paid, owned, and earned media. And that's the framework that we are using and seeing how AI plays within that framework. So the key components of this framework and driving this ecosystem is obviously the activation, how we drive, deliver those interactions across different media channels. It's identity, and we've been hearing about creating those personas, understanding who our consumer is and the data point. Content, how we drive that content scale. Personalization, and we know it's tricky in our industry, so how deep we go, how we can personalize. And then intelligence, how we drive that constant optimization. So So this is the areas that we are kind of taking into consideration from a MarTech stack, and then understanding how AI plays within that MarTech stack piece. So you're gonna say, yes, oh great, but how can we balance AI with human intelligence, with a highly regulated industry? And since we are a federal charter bank, we have really tight regulations with making sure we drive brand integrity. Because we want to make sure that we work on reputational management and we are really taking care of brand growth. So the way I see it and we see at the Federal Savings Bank AI is in these kind of top areas here of how we can drive kind of like ideation of content, how we can kind of drive content creation, content production. And when we talk about content, it's both visual content as well as copyright and voice and tone. Is how we drive kind of marketing efficiencies. So we can, when we talk, I think somebody was talking before about how we can gain time, how we can drive, make sure our team focuses on things that drive creativity instead of focusing in high productive copy-paste type of actions, and how we can drive in that way creative optimization. But at the same time, we need to make sure we keep that balance between art and science, between technology and human capital, and understand how we're going to keep on using our people, our like creative intelligence. So in terms of kind of creativity, emotional intelligence, and our industry is interesting because it's very fact-based, but like we manage money. And we know that money is a product that everybody really cares. We are in the home lending industry. We look at most of like the communication and in them being kind of very product driven, but at the same time, it's the largest purchase you would do almost in your life, your home. So they're like highly emotional products. If I ask you how much money you make, everybody was gonna say, come on, that's very private. But still we treat it kind of like in a very factual way. So how we can use kind of like our human intelligence to understand that subtlety, to understand kind of what's the moral and ethical implications, and make sure we balance AI with a human intelligence piece. I'm not going to talk and tell you the importance of compliance and legal impact. We all have more of our fair share of boundaries from a legal perspective, but at the same time, we need to partner with them. I have people of compliance in my team. We have like first line of compliance reporting to me, and then second line to reporting to the chief risk officer. So we are talking about making sure we kind of don't have any bias, and we don't kind of like, and we follow all fair lending guidelines, governance, data privacy and protection, IP properties. If we develop content with AI, visual content, who owns that IP, that intellectual property? So we partner with our legal team in understanding how we balance AI with all those guidelines. And last but not least, as marketers, we know the importance of the brand integrity and making sure everything that we do has the right tone and voice, as well as that human touch. We don't want to over-personalize and be freaky and be big brothers watching you and know almost too much about that person that it kind of like touches that sensitivity, even if we have that data. So that's kind of areas that we need to learn how to balance, and it's now on a case-by-case basis. But I want to share the framework that we have built, and we are not all the way there yet, but we have put together a framework to analyze kind of our go-to-market strategy. So if we want to define how we use AI, it's in these 4 buckets. When we talk about time, accelerating time to market, it's driving personalization, it's accelerating insight, and driving more kind of cost efficiencies. So I want to go a little deeper into that. So this is the roadmap that we built with the team from all the way from data to activation. And we divide it almost in 3 buckets. One, it's data. And this seems to be an easy and kind of like, yeah, obviously it's data. This is really complex to execute. I don't know how many of you think that you nailed it down. We haven't nailed it down yet, but we are looking into that framework. So, spoiler alert, this is the framework created. We are not all the way there yet. So, in a bank like ours, that we have a retail division, we have mortgage, we have kind of like different areas of the business, we definitely have many different data sources sitting in different systems. Whether it's CRM, whether it's a POS system, whether it's kind of LOS, our loan kind of like operating system, whether it's like ads that we have in Google Analytics, SEM Rush, kind of like everything that we do, to kind of like servicing data and like digital data from our digital banking side to competitive data. So we do kind of use AI agent to also collect competitive data. So how kind of like we integrate all those data points to create personas, and we talk about like synthetic personas and big that kind of audience. So basically integrating clean data that we believe is kind of first party, hopefully first party, zero party data, as well as data we get from other sources, and integrating that into this persona. And then the part of analyze and action. So we have the persona, we create campaigns, and those campaigns, we kind of think about what's kind of like the audience segmentation based on the personas that we got AI helped to create. What's our consumer journey? So we were talking before about like that chart of MarTech. How's our consumer going through a consumer journey across different touch points? And it's interesting because like we realize that the consumer journey is very different by persona. So first-time home buyer, obviously first-time home buyer is going to be a different process than when you already purchase a home. But we realize also changes in terms of consumer segments. We have people who have been in the US and they are like first generation in the US. So their parents never bought a home. And we started looking at mostly Hispanics, but then we realized it was across any other kind of demographic segment whose parents never bought a home. So they were having a completely different process. They didn't understand that they need to pull credit first. They will go straight to look for houses and get kind of there, and then when they need to make an offer, I don't have a pre-approval letter. Compared to other consumer segments, mostly general market, who kind of have kind of like family knowledge about the process, so they start the process with getting a pre-approval letter first. So, and veterans, veterans is one of our largest consumer segments, and when they are active military versus veteran, it's really a retired veteran, it's like really different, the consumer journey. So understanding those consumer journeys by audience, by persona, by segment, as well as understanding what kind of like competitors are doing to engage with those consumers in that kind of consumer segment, in that consumer journey. So all of this data help us plan better campaigns. And generating content. So we talk a lot about AI, and truthfully, we have a mix between AI and human intelligence in the place of content. So we use AI mostly for content ideation. We still have copywriters writing content, and we use a human to approve the content. We have agentic AI with compliance guidelines to review content, but still a person is kind of doing the final review, even in my team, before it goes to the second line of compliance. And then we use kind of AI to personalize part of the content by audience, by persona. And then we activate across different touch points. So that's kind of our basically framework and how we are seeing the different stages of the market stack and the different stages of the process and the market stack, leveraging those stages, as well as the use of AI across different touch points. So I'm going to share an example that I can share. And it's basically a campaign that we drove across trust. As we all know, in financial institutions, trust is a value that is really important, that really drives kind of like the differentiation. It's almost like a baseline. Like, you're not gonna drive kind of like, we're not gonna make any business with a company you don't trust. But in financial institutions, as we said, we sell money, we sell access to money, we sell financial services. So trust is more important than any other industry. So we realized that we need kind of to go deeper, both with internal and external audiences. So some of the stuff that we talk with other speakers talk mostly about external audiences, about our customers. We realized that it was also, for us, important to spread the word internally. So we created one of our consumer segments is actually our employees. So we are looking both internally and externally. We have a big team of bankers. We have externally sourced bankers and commission only, and a huge team of them. We have other business that is kind of like sales, more of like calling center type of model. So really the sales team are a really important part of our business. So we want to make sure that everything that we do, we kind of create and communicate that to both internal and external audiences. So we look for data, and in our case, we use Total Expert as a CRM, and Velocify, we use a POS, we use Blend, we use a lead management system of Velocify, we use Encompass, we have Fiserv, we have PHH as a servicer, we have Google Analytics, we have SEMrush. So those are players that we kind of have like in each of the different parts of the business. And as you can tell, marketing doesn't own the connection and the relationship with these vendors. They are parts of ops, part of sales, part of marketing. So part of this holistic process is fundamental, the connection and the partnership with key areas of the organization. So one of the biggest learnings is we cannot do any of this unless we have strong stakeholder management. And I'm kind of like having direct conversation with all my other partners, the CIO, the CTO, the CFO, head of sales, etc. So there's a lot of kind of more traditional business-to-business management in building the right relationships to build that internal trust to share the data across the board. So as personas, we have, as I say, employees. We call them borrowers or consumers, general market, VA, first generation, second generation, etc. We use, in general, from a marketing perspective, this traditional framework of pain, fear, and gain to understand what kind of like really makes our customers tick. And then kind of content ideation, production, and personalization, and be able to customize by platforms. And there was a question in the panel before about like how we customize by platforms, and it also helped us understand from each of the personas what are the platforms that make more sense to execute. So here we just an example of how we use as a first stage insights of having our AI agent give us insights of that framework by persona. So here is our internal audience, so basically employees. When we're talking with employees, in our case, we're talking both sales and ops, and what basically employees struggle with, what are fears, what employees worry about, pain, fear, what they worry about, gains, what they kind of like want to achieve, and basically how we build that trust that across addressing these kind of core insights. So once we have kind of that insights, we can translate in second stage creating that content. So basically what the agent told us based on iterative feedback of everything, all those data points. And as also from a marketing perspective, we have given AI our kind of brand guidelines, chance of content, blogs that we write. So kind of like getting deeper into our tone and voice is that in order to reinforce trust, we need to take an approach of like making our leadership for internal communication more visible. So we started kind of working better with testimonials and also reinforce the sense of purpose. So this is part of the communication we drive of like basically showing how we are kind of like to internal audiences, how we are performing as an industry, showcasing some of our like leadership and working internally with the concept of legacy that is completely related to trust and be reinforcing that message internally. And from an activation perspective, we use different platforms. I don't know if you guys have screensavers. We have everybody in our have screensavers, and we realize it's one of the most successful internal tools. Everybody sees that screensaver 20 million times a day. So we realized that for this audience, that was a really great way to communicate. Again, it seems like marketing 101, very basic, but actually delivered and get that system because we send emails and we do text, but as you know, we all receive 20 million emails and like, we really don't pay attention so much. And also kind of really balancing that digital and in-person perspective. So we created events related to that in the different, our major offices. Yeah. No, we are doing this is internal audience. This is internal audience. So it's basically for employees. No, it's for employees. I'm going to show you what we're doing for customers. This was an internal audience, was employees. So like, as I mentioned, we set up that one of our audiences is employees, just to make sure we can reinforce the message, because there's a part of our business, is a retail business, that is relationship-based. So we lean on their communication for our brand with consumers. So we need to make sure we repeat that messaging to them. So this is actually external audiences. These are borrowers. And we went through the same framework. We're using our AI agent. And we're in the same framework of pain, fear, and gain. And basically how kind of like we need to communicate more like regular updates as kind of like a way of to address those touch points on those areas of fear, and how it's important for us to be very clear about our products. So this is external audiences. So we also use our AI agents to compare different consumer personas and see what's the difference in how we approach from a messaging perspective. So again, once we have these guidelines, we are using our content team, our copywriters to write content, and then use AI against to personalize it. So you see some of like the creative here that we develop of proud to be the largest privately held veteran-owned bank operating bank in the country. So you see kind of how we build that trust with external audiences with a very clear message or other clear messages about the kind of loan products. So we use AI in the beginning of the process. Then we use human intelligence and work with our teams in producing the content and in the compliance piece. And then we personalize by audience using AI again. So that's kind of like from a content perspective, that's the way we are kind of using AI as part of our market stack. So I want to kind of like to leave you with the learnings and what are the most important things for us to do overall as the CMO and my team. What are kind of the things that we think is key to do today? And it's first of all data, the data advantage, build secure and compliant quality data operations and leverage first-party and zero-party data. And that's a continuous search for us. We have been much more diligent in capturing that data in our platforms, whether it is digital platforms, whether there's events, and we are really driving kind of that more easier way to capture first-party data with any of our bankers events. We have around 900 bankers, so and many of them are doing kind of events. So how to start like being very focused about kind of capturing the right data and managing that piece. Again, work in progress in terms of putting all that together. Second, customer centricity, deeper understanding the audiences and the human experiences. As you guys might know, like consumer centricity is not always the first thing that people think in the banking industry. I come from CPG, from consumer packaged goods. I have kind of 20 years experience working with brands like Coca-Cola, Colgate-Palmolive, Clorox. And in that industry, it's customer first because basically you're selling commodities, branded commodities. In the financial industry, it's something that we need to keep on reinforcing when we are with the board, when we are in C-level table, the importance of like thinking customer first. Most of like my colleagues thinks product first, risk first. So there's other variables around the table, and think people are not really thinking about how the consumer sees those brands. So part of like or the learnings were how with like a customer centricity approach, we can drive better differentiation and brand products from a consumer perspective. So that has been part of our path. Stakeholder alignment. Again, I don't think we can do anything without stakeholder alignments into this environment, mostly IT, data, legal, but also sales, and ops. So that's part of what we need to make sure we think about, like, what's the 3-year, 5-year plan from a data perspective, how the investments are gonna be taken in consideration. When we sit with the CFO, we said, we need this in data management system. We need this in upgrading our CRM tools. There's a constant push and pull there because it's kind of, as you guys know, longer term or the middle term investment. So how we do that. This is a tough one. Have compliance as your partner. I think that it's a push and pull, and it's sometimes a little hard to get into the same framework and mindset because their objective is to minimize risk. And my objective as CMO and kind of growth driver is to maximize growth. So those two things are not completely aligned from a strategic perspective. So how we kind of like meet in the middle and drive growth in a compliant way. Collaboration infrastructure, and I think this is an important one when we're talking about, I think Angela was talking before also about this piece about like how you drive kind of like that infrastructure of dashboards, of like workflows to have different teams working together in similar projects. So for us, we roll out a completely different project management tool that we have sales, compliance, and part of ops working with same workflows. And that really help us drive kind of better speed to market because like before we used to have somebody was working in Jira, we were working in Teams, other was working in Asana, and there was kind of like almost this silo mentality of each of the different teams working in their own platforms. And for us, bringing one platform together has been really key to be able to execute things like an AI process or involving AI in those areas because we are all working the same kind of workflow and platform. Personalization, kind of when we talk about like the content supply chain and how we can continue to do that. Right now, most of the communication that we're doing is at a persona level. We are testing something on a person by person level. about kind of like emails about you own X and the rate is Y, and this is what we are kind of offering you. Still kind of working with compliance in that piece of how we can do more of that. AI powered performance. So I mentioned how we are using AI from a content perspective, persona perspective, reporting. So those are the areas that we are using it most. Right now we are testing agentic AI for some of the inbounding and outbounding calls from a customer perspective and sales and marketing perspective. So that's something that we are currently testing. So understanding kind of how we can use it and how we drive the level of trust and how from a call recording and a compliance perspective, we can be consistent with everything that we do in the company. We briefly talk about kind of high performance teams, and I think I have some people on my team here, but for me has been a big focus of how we drive the right team, how we drive teams that understand what we're trying to do, understand the roadmap, and we can build it together, and how we upgrade kind of skill set on more junior resources to make sure they are not concerned about kind of AI, thinking that they want to take their jobs, but at the same time, they kind of like have high learning potential. So working on creating not just kind of the capability piece, but the culture of saying it's okay in some areas if we test and we fail. And this is going to be the budget for us for testing. And this is it's okay if we try something new and we fail. And that's something that it's not very common in financial institutions since we are managing risk across the board. So basically failure is not an option. So how we can bring from a technology perspective, MarTech perspective, saying it's okay to test these 5 things and we know that not all of them are not going to be a home run. Measurement and accountability basically link marketing outcomes with sales outcomes. We all kind of like get rewarded by how much we drive the business forward. So kind of how we can do that. And then last but not least is about purpose and SEGs. As we know, kind of like purpose is important, but it seems almost like we're talking about purpose-driven companies and we're talking of AI and technology as two disassociate things, almost a dualistic approach to marketing. We need to merge them together. So we always think about like we need to win our customers' heart, minds, and wallets. And we will do that kind of merging those things. So this is it. We are kind of getting on time. Here is my social. So if you want to follow me, or my email address in case you have any more questions. I know that we are at time. I'm going to be here for a couple of hours. So if you have any additional questions, just stop me. I'm happy to answer any other questions. And now we can go to have lunch in the main room. It's going to be 1 hour. So by 2, we need to be back in the main room. Thank you, guys.